Commander, you will remove that decoration from your uniform before I hear another word from you. This is a court of law, not a parade ground. The court does not entertain medals of unknown provenance. The man on the bench was 68 years old. He wore a black robe and a gold wedding band. His name plate read, The Honorable Theodore Vance Holloway. The clock above the bench read 9:47. She did not move. The room was the largest courtroom in the federal courthouse for the Eastern District of Virginia. 230 seats. Every one of them filled. The Polaris Maritime Solutions legal team occupied the first 3 rows behind the defense table, 6 dark suits deep. The Ridgemore family sat front row left. A mother in black, a sister in gray, 2 cousins who could not look at the witness stand for more than 3 seconds at a time. Reporters lined the back wall. A wire camera fed a feed line to a cable news graphic 2 miles away in a satellite truck off Granby Street. She sat in a chair that did not fit her shoulders, a blue button-up blouse, plain weave, top button closed, charcoal slacks, low black heels. No rank, no insignia, no ribbons. The Medal of Honor at her throat, light blue ribbon, 5 white stars on the riband. The medal was the size of a quarter. It weighed 3/4 of an ounce. The room weighed considerably more. Her hands lay flat on her thighs, palms down, fingers neutral. Breath in for 4, out for 4. Commander Blackwood. Holloway leaned forward. I will not ask again. The medal. She did not answer. She did not look at the medal. She did not look at her counsel. There was no counsel beside her. By her own request, she looked at Holloway. The Polaris lead counsel was a woman named Annalise Garrick, 47 years old, $2,000 shoes. She smiled down at her notes. The court reporter's fingers moved. In the gallery, 6 rows back on the aisle, a man in Navy service dress blue stopped chewing his gum. Master Chief Petty Officer Garth Tucker, 56 years old, senior enlisted advisor to the Chief of Naval Operations of the United States Navy. He had been chewing a piece of cinnamon gum since the courtroom doors opened at 9:15. He took it out of his mouth. He folded it into a tissue. He put the tissue into the pocket of his service blouse. He stood up. Holloway saw nothing. Holloway saw what he wanted to see. He saw a witness, alone, in a chair too big for her, not yet doing what he had told her to do. Tucker walked up the aisle. He pushed the heavy oak door open with his shoulder. He stepped into the corridor. The door eased shut behind him without a sound. Officer Castellan, Holloway said. Note for the record, the witness is in contempt of this court. Castellan was the senior courtroom bailiff, 51 years old, 24 years on the bench side detail. He stood at parade rest beside the witness stand. He did not move. Noted, officer. Noted, Your Honor. The room did not breathe. She had been ordered to remove things before. Boots, in cold water at 3 a.m, off the coast of Mindanao. Body armor, in a corridor with smoke at chest height. A sidearm. Twice. Both times by men who had not survived the next 90 minutes. The medal had been on her throat for 173 days. It had not yet been ordered off her by a man who was going to live. Commander, Holloway said. Final warning. Breath in. 4. Out. 4. The medal did not move. Out in the corridor, Tucker pulled a phone from the inside pocket of his service blouse. The phone was old, government issue, unmarked. He thumbed a single number. The line picked up on the 3rd ring. Sir, he said, it's the witness. Where? Said the voice on the other end. Norfolk Federal, Tucker said. He's after the medal. On my way. The line went dead. Tucker put the phone back in his blouse. He buttoned the 2nd button. He turned and walked back toward the courtroom door. He did not run. He did not need to. Inside, Holloway was opening his mouth to say the word contempt a 2nd time. The court reporter's fingers were already moving. Castellan, at parade rest, was looking at the floor. Garrick, smiling, was making a small mark in the margin of her notes. The witness sat without moving. Her hands were flat on her thighs. The Medal of Honor was at her throat. The clock above the bench read 9:48. Tucker pushed the courtroom door open. He sat down in a different seat, 1 row closer to the front than he had been. He did not look at her face. He looked at her hands. The hands had not moved. His mouth did not smile. His eyes did. Something old in them, something that did not belong in a federal courtroom. Woke up. The chair, too big for her shoulders, held a woman the room had no measurement for yet. Garrick rose from the defense table at 9:52. She held a single sheet of paper. She walked to the witness stand. She placed the paper face up on the rail. She did not look at the metal. "Commander Blackwood," she said, "I'd like to direct your attention to this document. It's a GPS extract from the cargo vessel Calder. The track shows your vessel was 22 nautical miles from the Liberian-flagged tanker at the time you claim to have boarded it. 22 nautical miles. That would be, by your own testimony, a physical impossibility. Would you agree?" The protagonist looked at the page for 1 second, maybe 1.5. "No," Garrick smiled. "No? That track is from the Halberd." "Pardon? Not the Calder. The signature header is wrong. You're holding the wrong receipt." The court reporter's fingers paused for the first time all morning, then started again. Garrick blinked. Once. The blink was a half-second too long. She glanced at her notes. "Commander, this document was provided by Pelorus." The protagonist's voice was flat. 2 syllables for a corporation. "The header is wrong. The encryption protocol is the wrong version. The timestamp drift is consistent with a known firmware error in that quarter, Q2 of 2023. The metadata signature is from the Halberd. The Halberd was in the Persian Gulf." "Commander, hand me the original." Garrick did not hand her the original. Garrick did not have the original. The Pelorus bench, 6 suits deep, did not breathe for a full second. Holloway leaned forward. "The witness will limit her answers to the questions asked." "Yes, Your Honor." 2 syllables, hands flat. In row 4, a reporter from a defense intelligence newsletter wrote 1 word in his notebook: "Operator." In the gallery, 2 of the Ridgemore cousins looked at each other. The taller of them, early 30s, athletic build, looked at his shoes. Out in the corridor, Tucker's call had ended. He came back into the courtroom and sat 1 row closer than before. He did not announce himself. The Marine gunnery sergeant in row 2, dress blue, name tape Delacroix, 3 rows of ribbons, turned his head 1 degree to the left. Garrick recovered. Garrick was good at her job. "Commander, let's set aside the question of provenance for the document. Let's address the metal at your throat directly. You testified at deposition that the citation is, quote, currently classified. Is that correct?" "Correct." "Currently classified by what authority?" "The Department of Defense." "To what level?" "That is itself classified." Garrick smiled again. "So, to recap, you arrive in this courtroom wearing a decoration whose citation is classified, whose level of classification is classified, and whose existence in any open-source database is verifiable." "Pardon?" "Verifiable. By the appropriate authority, which is not present. Not present. Yet." The reporter in row 4 wrote a second word. "Wait." Holloway leaned forward. "Counsel, the court has already addressed the question of the metal. The witness was instructed to remove it. The witness is in contempt. The court will not entertain further argument on the legitimacy of decorations." "Your Honor," Garrick, "the court has ruled." Garrick paused for 1 second. Garrick was being told something by a federal judge that she had not asked to be told. She caught it. She inclined her head. She returned to her notes. The protagonist had not moved. Hands flat, breath 4 in, 4 out. Eyes on Holloway. Holloway met her eyes. He held them for 2 seconds. He looked away. The court reporter wrote. Garrick said, "Commander, let's discuss the chain of custody on the recovered material from the alleged April 23rd incident." "Yes. Beginning with, from which point?" "I beg. Recovery, transport, intake, secure storage, or release for review." "Recovery. 0413 Zulu, April 23rd, 2023. Bridge of the Calder. 46-page bound ledger, pale green canvas cover. No markings on the exterior. Recovered by hand from a wall-mounted safe, combination 0466, intake at 0436 by Senior Chief Daniel Reyes. Reyes was killed at 0436 and 41 seconds. Intake reassigned to me at 0437. Storage at 0531 local. Slow down, Commander, the reporter. At 0531 local in the secure box of vessel Sirius, hull number 819, Sasebo Naval Base. Intake clerk Petty Officer First Class Dolores Mesa. Locker number K-4. Released for review at 1400 Zulu, April 25th. To the Office of Naval Intelligence. Commander, from memory, Your Honor. Holloway opened his mouth and closed it. The court reporter caught up. Garrick walked back to the defense table without asking another question. The Polaris bench, 6 suits deep, did not move. Tucker, in the gallery, watched her hands. The hands were still flat. 10:04. The press leak began. A junior Polaris paralegal, name not given, 26 years old, slid a tablet across the polished wood of the defense table to a reporter on the gallery aisle. The reporter, a woman in a dark blazer, lanyard from a national news desk, looked at the screen, smiled the smile of someone who had just been handed something convenient, and began to type. Within 90 seconds, a feed line crawled under a cable news graphic 2 miles away in a satellite truck off Granby Street. Decorated Navy. Witness faces contempt over disputed metal. The graphic was up for 37 minutes. In the courtroom, Holloway called the next phase of testimony. Mrs. Ridgmore took the stand at 10:10. Black dress, black handbag. Hayes Ridgmore had been her son. The narrator gave her 2 sentences for grief. A son was dead. A mother was here. The narrator gave her 3 sentences for the gap between her grief and the name in the ledger. Hayes Ridgmore, page 7. Hayes Ridgmore, page 19. Hayes Ridgmore, page 31. Wire transfer, $246,000 US dollars. A bank in the Sultanate of Oman, March of 2022. Mrs. Ridgmore did not know the ledger. Mrs. Ridgmore knew her son. The narrator did not redeem anyone in row 1. The narrator allowed that those 2 things were not the same thing. Holloway watched the witness stand throughout. He was not watching the woman in black. He was watching the woman in the blue blouse. Castellan, the senior bailiff, stepped forward at 10:19. He did not announce himself. He approached the witness stand under the pretext of adjusting the microphone. The microphone did not need adjusting. He stood close. He looked at the metal at the protagonist's throat. He spoke in a voice low enough that only she heard it. "Take it off, ma'am. Easier on you." The protagonist did not blink. "No." Castellan stepped back. He walked to his post at parade rest. His face had not changed. The court reporter wrote nothing. The narrator wrote, Castellan was a man inside a story he had walked into a long time ago. He had taken many steps along that story. He had not yet taken the step that would let him out. Mrs. Ridgmore left the stand at 10:28. Garrick rose for the next round. She had a manila folder. She placed it on the rail. She opened it. "Commander, chain of custody," continued. "Storage transfer from Sasebo to Norfolk, 14th of October, 2023. Receiving authority? Office of Naval Intelligence, Detachment Tango. Receiving officer, Lieutenant Commander Ines Park Holiday. Intake clerk Petty Officer 2nd Class Robert Nagy. Locker D-21, Vault 47. 2-key sequence. Both keys verified at the time of transfer. Are you reading from anything, Commander?" The protagonist raised both hands flat, palms up. The metal stayed at her throat. "From memory, Your Honor." The court reporter slowed. For the first time all morning, her fingers did not keep up. Holloway, on the bench, reached for his gavel. The gavel did not fall. In row 6, Tucker buttoned the 2nd button of his service blouse. The gesture was small. To the men in the back of the room who knew what to look for, it was a piece of a different language. Outside the courthouse, on Granby Street, a black SUV pulled up to the curb at 10:34. A second SUV followed. The vehicles were unmarked. The drivers did not get out. The escorts did. 2 men in dress blues stepped onto the sidewalk and stood at parade rest. They did not enter the courthouse. They waited. Tucker, through the high window above the gallery, saw them. The protagonist could not see them. Garrick rose for a 3rd pass. She looked at her notes. She looked at Holloway. She looked at her notes again. She did not pass. She returned to her seat. The Polaris bench, 6 suits deep, did not move. 6 pens lay on 6 pads. None of them was being held. Holloway called a short recess at 10:38, 15 minutes. The protagonist stood. She did not stretch. She did not look at the gallery. She walked across the well of the court, past the empty defense and prosecution tables, through the side door, and into the witness room. The door closed behind her. The metal at her throat had not moved a single millimeter. If you have ever sat across from someone who decided in their first 30 seconds that you didn't deserve to be in the room, and you held the line anyway, subscribe to Honor Tales. The next story is for you. Outside on Granby Street, a third vehicle pulled up behind the second SUV. The vehicle was a Cadillac, the color of a calm sea. The man who stepped out of the back wore 4 stars on his shoulder boards. He did not look up at the courthouse. He looked at his watch. He waited. Across the courtroom, Tucker had not moved. His hands in his lap were folded. His eyes, on the gallery aisle, were calm. The story, 3 rows back from the witness stand, was about to leave the bench's hands. Recess ended at 10:53. Holloway returned from chambers 2 minutes early. His face was the color of recycled paper. He climbed the steps to the bench. He did not look at the gallery. He did not look at the witness stand. A clerk handed him a single sheet of paper as he sat. He read the sheet. He read it again. He set it on the bench beside the gavel. "Court is back in session," he said. The protagonist returned to the witness stand. She sat, hands flat, breath 4 in, 4 out. Garrick rose with a sealed envelope. The envelope was the size of a magazine. The seal across the flap was a bureau watermark from the Department of the Navy Personnel Bureau. The watermark was the wrong shade of blue. "Your Honor, defense moves to enter. Exhibit Defense. 14A. A redacted Personnel Bureau document indicating the Medal of Honor at the witness's throat is, quote, under review for procedural irregularities in the citation process," Holloway said, admitted. There was no opposing counsel. The protagonist was not represented. She did not object. The narrator noted the absence with a single sentence. She had been told the proceeding would be fair. She had not been told the proceeding would have rules. Garrick set the envelope on the rail. The protagonist did not pick it up. "Commander, are you aware that the citation associated with your decoration is currently under administrative review? That document is forged." The court froze. Holloway leaned forward. "The witness will not characterize defense exhibits as, watermark is the wrong shade. Bureau seal lacks the inner ring. 3 serial number typos, one of which assigns the document to a personnel cluster that does not exist." "Commander, from memory, Your Honor." The court reporter stopped typing for the second time that morning. Holloway's face was no longer the color of recycled paper. Holloway's face was the color of cold ash. Garrick said, "I have no further questions on this exhibit at this time, Your Honor." She returned to the defense table. Her shoes did not click on the floor. The clerk handed Holloway a second sheet of paper. Holloway read it. He stared at it for 4 seconds. "Note for the record," he said. "The court has been informed by the General Services Administration's Common Access Card Division that the witness's CAC has been administratively suspended, pending review of the contested decoration. The court notes that the witness is, as of 9:53 Eastern, without active credentials in the Department of the Navy." The narrator did not interject. The narrator allowed the line to sit in the room. In the gallery, Tucker buttoned the 3rd button of his service blouse. Castellan stepped forward a second time. He approached the witness stand under no pretext at all. He placed his palm on the rail in front of the protagonist. He leaned. He spoke in a voice low enough that only she heard it. "Don't make me ask twice." His thumb tapped the rail. Once. Twice. The protagonist did not blink. "You won't." Castellan stepped back. His face had not changed. He returned to parade rest. The narrator wrote, "He had been within 13 inches of the metal. His hand had not closed. The story he had walked into was beginning to walk back into him." Garrick rose for a 4th pass. "Commander Blackwood, I'd like to ask you to walk the court through the morning of April 23rd, 2023, beginning at 03:45 Zulu. The court would like a complete recounting." The protagonist paused for 1 full breath cycle. 4 in, 4 out. 03:48 Zulu, she said. "Breach. Forward port quarter calder. Lead element. Starfall 2. Slow down, Commander. 0402. Bridge taken. Hostiles down. 2. Friendlies. 0. Asset located at 409 in the navigator's berth. Locked from the outside. Asset condition non-ambulatory. Commander. 0413. Ledger recovered. Wall safe. Port bulkhead. Combination. 0466. 46 pages. Pale green canvas binding. Commander. The court. 0421. Starfall. 2 down. LT. Marcus Owens. Round through the port mandible. Exit posterior right occiput. Killed instantly. Hostile shooter. Deck below. Neutralized at 0422. The Pelorus bench was no longer pretending to take notes. 0436. Starfall 3 down. Senior Chief Daniel Reyes. Round through the right pectoral. No exit. Bled out in 18 seconds. The court reporter was crying. The court reporter did not stop typing. 0441. Starfall 4 down. Chief Warrant Officer Kestrel Park. 2 rounds. Killed instantly. Garrick stood at the defense table without moving. 0509. Asset extracted. Egress vector starboard aft. Zodiac. Combat swimmer recovery. 0515. Vessel cleared of all friendly personnel. Calder unsupported on the surface. Final transmission from Starfall 1 to Sirius at 0517. She paused. From memory, Your Honor. The room did not breathe through it. Holloway's gavel was in his hand. The gavel did not fall. Outside, on the courthouse steps, the Marine gunnery sergeant in row 2, Delacroix, had just opened the door of an unmarked black sedan. Tucker stepped into the corridor at 11:09. He did not announce his absence. He walked. He pulled the phone from his service blouse, thumbed the same number, waited. The line picked up on the second ring. Sir. Confirmed. Holloway, Garrick, who else? Cyrus Ridgemore. Confirmed? 2:30 a.m. last night. 3 calls between Holloway's chambers and the slip at the Annapolis Yacht Yard. A pause. She's compromised on paper. We move now. Already moving. ETA? 11:32. Have her standing. She's standing, sir. She's been standing since 9:47. The line went dead. Tucker pushed the corridor door open. He did not return to his seat. He stood at the back of the gallery, 6 rows behind the press wall. He did not need to be closer. Inside the courtroom, Holloway had received a folded note from a clerk. The note was handwritten, 2 lines. The narrator named what was on the note without quoting it. Step away. Step off the bench. Walk out a side door. Do it in the next 4 minutes. Holloway read it twice. He folded it into a square the size of a postage stamp. He placed it in the pocket of his robe. He looked up. He stayed. The narrator did not editorialize. The narrator wrote, he had been bought a long time ago. The price had included his exit. The exit had now been offered to him. He chose in 11 seconds to leave the door unopened. The protagonist asked for water at 11:15. It was the first thing she had asked for in 2 hours and 40 minutes. Castellan walked it across the well of the court without looking at her. He set a paper cup on the rail. The cup was half full. The water in it was level. There was no tremor anywhere on the wood. The protagonist did not pick it up. She said, "Thank you." Castellan returned to parade rest. In the gallery, the man in row 21, charcoal suit, no military bearing, sandy hair, a watch the cost of an SUV, stood up. He did not take his briefcase. He walked up the aisle. He pushed open the heavy oak door of the courtroom. He left. He did not return. He was not, in the rest of this story, seen again. The narrator named his absence with 1 sentence and moved on. The room was being emptied of the people who were not going to be in it when the doors opened next. Tucker, at the back wall, looked at his watch. 11:19. The Cadillac, the color of a calm sea, was now parked at the curb on Granby Street, directly in front of the main entrance. 2 more vehicles had pulled up behind it. 5 men in dress blues stood on the sidewalk. None of them were drawing attention. None of them needed to. Holloway said, "Court will continue. Counsel." Garrick rose. She did not pretend to have notes. She delivered her question from memory. "Commander Blackwood, the court has, on the record, instructed you to remove the decoration at your throat. You have refused. I would like to give you one final opportunity to comply, in good faith before this court. Hands flat. No. Commander. No. Garrick sat down. Holloway leaned forward. His pale color had cycled into something close to gray. He said the words, slowly. Officer Castellan, please assist the witness in removing the medal. The narrator wrote 2 sentences, then stopped. The bailiff was about to lay hands on a Medal of Honor recipient on the bench's verbal order in front of 230 witnesses, while she sat at the witness stand of a federal court of the United States of America. Castellan took 1 step. He took a second. He paused. Tucker, from the back wall, took 1 slow breath. He let it out. He folded his hands at his waist. He became, for a moment, the calmest man in the building. The protagonist did not move. Her hands were flat. Her breath was 4 in, 4 out. The medal at her throat had not moved a millimeter all morning. Outside, at the curb on Granby Street, the man with 4 stars on his shoulder boards looked once at his watch, nodded to the 2 men at his shoulders, and turned toward the courthouse doors. Inside, Castellan took a 3rd step. If your family or your colleagues have ever underestimated the very thing that kept them safe, subscribe to Honor Tales. The next mission is on its way. Castellan was now within an arm's length of the riband at her throat. The protagonist looked, for the first time in the morning, at the bailiff. She did not raise her voice. She did not lift her hands. She delivered 4 words at the volume of a hand on a Bible. I would stop, officer. Castellan's hand had been moving. Castellan's hand stopped moving. His fingers were 2 inches from the medal. He did not close them. Tucker, at the back wall, exhaled. The clock above the bench read 11:28. In 4 minutes, the doors at the back of the courtroom were going to open. Her eyes were open. Her hands were flat. The room was the room. But the part of her that lived the part of her that lived in this room, had stepped, for a moment, off the witness stand, down through the floor of the court, across 3,741 nautical miles of water, onto the deck of the Calder, on the morning of April 23, 2023, at 03:48 Zulu. The deck was wet. The deck was always wet. The hijacker on the bridge was 22 years old. He had a face like a kid from the Annapolis cousin reunion she had not attended. Lt. Marcus Owens entered the breach point first. He always entered first. He was the youngest brother of 3. He had a daughter named Cleo who was 6 years old. Cleo's birthday was the 3rd of October. Marcus had told her, on the deck of the Sirius, 3 hours before the breach, that Cleo had asked him to bring her back a seashell. A pretty one, Cleo had said, not the broken kind. Marcus took a round through the port mandible at 0421. The round exited posterior right occiput. He was killed instantly. Cleo's 7th birthday was on the 3rd of October, 2023. Nora attended. Nora brought a seashell. Nora gave it to Cleo. Nora said it was from her father. Cleo did not ask if it was the broken kind. Senior Chief Daniel Reyes was Filipino-American. His wife Marisol was due in October. The baby was a boy. The baby was going to be named Daniel. Senior Chief Reyes, on the morning of April 23rd, took a round through the right pectoral, protecting the ledger hand. He bled out in 18 seconds. Daniel Reyes II was born on the 11th of October, 2023, at 2:41 a.m., Naval Medical Center, San Diego. Marisol named him Daniel anyway. Nora was at the bedside. Nora did not speak. Chief Warrant Officer Kestrel Park was Korean-American. Her brother served in the U.S. Coast Guard out of Astoria, Oregon. He had been the one to identify her body at the morgue at Sasebo. He had been the one to call their mother. Their mother had asked Nora, 3 weeks later, in a kitchen in Tacoma, why she had survived. Nora had not answered. Nora had drunk the tea. Nora had washed the cup. The medal had been awarded in November of 2025, 6 months ago. 12 people in the room. The president had placed the riband over her head with both hands. The riband had been cold against her collarbone. The room had been a room without cameras. The president had said one sentence. The sentence was not in any record that a federal judge in Norfolk could access. The citation was classified. The audience understood, without being told, that the citation did not exist on any paper available to Holloway. The medal at her throat was the only paper. The medal at her throat would not be removed. She had not been in a witness room. She had not asked for recess. She had been on the deck of the Calder and at a hospital bed in San Diego and in a kitchen in Tacoma. She came back. Her eyes were open. Her hands were flat. The medal was at her throat. Her phone, on silent, lit up against her thigh. A number she had not seen in 11 months. 3 words. Starfall, hold position. She did not reply. She glanced once at the screen. She turned the phone face down against the blue cotton of her blouse. The clock above the bench read 11:28. Holloway, 3 feet above her, was opening his mouth to say something to Castellan. Castellan, 26 inches from her throat, was looking at the floor. Tucker, at the back wall of the gallery, was looking at the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom. The doors were going to open in 2 minutes. She straightened her shoulders by half a degree. Nobody saw her do it. The medal at her throat did not move. She thought, without saying it, the only thing she had thought in the 3 hours and 41 minutes since the gavel had fallen. Marcus, Daniel, Kestrel. The medal stays. The clock moved. The clock was the only thing in the building that had not yet, this morning, said something dishonest. Outside, on Granby Street, the man with 4 stars on his shoulder boards walked toward the courthouse doors. He did not break stride. The medal stayed. Holloway said it again. Officer Castellan, remove the medal. Castellan was 26 inches from her throat. His hand was raised. His fingers were curled. He was looking at the floor. The narrator wrote, in 2 sentences, he had been told by his judge to do a thing he had been raised by his father, who had served, not to do. He had been carrying both fathers in the same body for 31 years, and now, on a Friday morning in May, the 2 of them were going to have to stop sharing the room. Castellan looked up from the floor. He looked at the medal. He looked at her face. His hand moved. The protagonist did not flinch. She did not stand. Her hands stayed flat. Her breath stayed even. Her eyes did not leave the bailiff's eyes. She spoke at the volume of a hand on a Bible. I would stop right there, officer. Castellan stopped. His fingers were 2 inches from the riband. The narrator wrote, 2 inches. 2 inches was the distance between a man who had walked into one story and a man who had walked, at the last moment, into a different one. 2 inches in a federal courtroom in Norfolk on the morning of May 1st, 2026. Castellan's hand did not close. His hand stayed where it was for 2 seconds, maybe 3. The court reporter wrote nothing. There was, on the official transcript of the proceeding, no entry for this 2 seconds, because the court reporter, a woman named Yolanda Rivers, who would later receive a federal award for her conduct that morning, chose to write nothing while a federal officer's fingers were 2 inches from a Medal of Honor. Castellan stepped back. He stepped back a second time. He resumed parade rest at his post beside the witness stand. His face had not changed. Inside his face, every muscle had moved 1/4 of an inch. Holloway leaned forward. His voice was hoarse for the first time all morning. Officer, the court has. Your Honor. Castellan did not turn his head. Officer of the court declines. The room did not breathe. On what grounds, officer? On the grounds, Your Honor, that the court has not, as far as I can tell, published any law of these United States that obliges me to lay my hands on a Medal of Honor. Holloway's mouth opened. Holloway's mouth closed. The narrator allowed Castellan that line. The narrator allowed it because the narrator did not redeem him cheaply. The narrator knew, and the audience would soon know, that Castellan had walked toward the witness stand twice, that Castellan had said, "Take it off, ma'am, and don't make me ask twice," and tapped the rail with his thumb, and that none of those things would be undone by the line he had just delivered. But the line was real, and the room knew it. The protagonist did not look at Castellan. The protagonist looked at Holloway. She smiled. It was the first smile of the morning. Small, steady, the kind that did not reach the eyes because the eyes were doing other work. Holloway saw it. The narrator wrote, in 3 sentences, he had spent his entire career on the bench reading the faces of people who came before him. He had read fear. He had read defiance. He had not, before this morning, read a face that was timing something. He looked at the clock above the bench. The clock read 11:31. He looked at the doors at the back of the courtroom. The doors did not move. He looked at Garrick. Garrick was not looking back at him. Garrick was looking at the side door. The side door from which a clerk normally entered with notes. The side door was empty. Holloway said, "The court will hear." The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Not slowly. Not for ceremony. They opened the way a door opens when a person who has been authorized to open it without ceremony chooses to use that authorization. 3 men walked in. The man at the center wore navy summer whites, 4 stars on each shoulder board. A ribbon racked the depth of a paperback book. The man at his right shoulder wore a charcoal civilian suit with a gold pin on the lapel. The pin was the seal of the office of the Secretary of the Navy. The man at his left carried a black portfolio. They did not speak. They walked, 3 abreast, down the center aisle. Tucker, at the back wall, took a step to the side and stood at attention. The Marine gunnery sergeant in row 2, Delacroix, was already standing. In row 4, the defense intelligence reporter wrote, on a fresh page, 3 words. She was right. The Cadillac, the color of a calm sea, was, at this moment, parked 12 feet from the curb on Granby Street, engine running. The clock read 11:32. The protagonist sat at the witness stand without moving. Her hands were flat. Her breath was even. The Medal of Honor at her throat did not move a single millimeter. She had been right about the time. The 3 men reached the rail at the front of the gallery in 19 seconds. The man at the center stopped at the well of the court. He did not approach the bench. He did not approach the witness stand. He stood, in the well, between the 2 of them, and looked once at Holloway. Holloway's face did not yet know what was happening. The man at his right shoulder, the charcoal suit with the gold pin, opened his mouth. Robert Halberstadt, Secretary of the Navy. Your Honor. Holloway's face moved through the first stage, confusion. He did not, for 1 full second, recognize the title. The man at the Admiral's left shoulder, black portfolio, stepped forward to the bench. He set the portfolio on the bench in front of Holloway. He opened the cover. Daniel Sosa, Senior Trial Counsel, United States Department of Justice. Your Honor. Holloway looked at the paper inside the portfolio. Stage 2. Disbelief. The first 3 lines of the document said, by order of the Attorney General of the United States, Civil Action 2-6-1149, Ridgemore et al. Versus United States Navy and Commander Eleanor Blackwood, quashed in entirety. Custody of the bench is assumed by the United States Marshals Service pending federal indictment. Holloway read the lines. He read them again. Stage 3. Recognition. He looked up at the Admiral in the well of the court. Stage 4. Horror. His hand drifted to the gavel beside him, but his fingers, when they reached the wood, did not close. The Admiral turned. His name plate read Halbrecht, W. The 4 stars on his shoulder boards caught the courtroom light. He took 1 step toward the witness stand. He stopped at the rail. He brought his right hand up to the brim of his cap. He held the salute. The room did not breathe. The court reporter did not type. Castellan, at parade rest, did not turn his head, but his eyes had filled. Garrick, at the defense table, had placed both hands flat on the polished wood, palms down, as if she was steadying herself against something tipping. The Admiral spoke. His voice was not loud. His voice did not need to be. Commander Blackwood, you are released from this court. The Navy thanks you for your patience. The protagonist did not stand. Witnesses do not stand from a witness stand. But her hands lifted, half an inch, off her thighs. The first motion she had made in 3 hours and 45 minutes. She did not return the salute. Witnesses do not return salutes. She inclined her head 1 degree. The Admiral held the salute for 3 full seconds. He brought it down. He turned to Holloway. Sir. His voice had changed. The change was not loud. The change was that the change was visible. You are remanded to the custody of the United States Marshals Service. You will leave the bench under your own power. The dignity of this proceeding, what is left of it, is being preserved on your behalf. Use that. 2 men stepped forward from the side door of the courtroom. Federal marshals, brown jackets, gold stars, sidearms holstered. They approached the bench. They did not speak. Holloway stood from the bench. He did not look at the protagonist as he came down the steps. He did not look at the Admiral. He did not look at Garrick. He looked at his shoes. The marshals walked him past the witness stand, past the defense table, past the press wall, and out the side door. The door closed. Senior trial counsel Sosa took the gavel from the bench. He placed it inside the black portfolio. He closed the portfolio. The portfolio was, from this point, federal evidence in a separate proceeding. The Admiral turned back to the witness stand. He did not speak. The protagonist stood from the witness stand. The narrator did not narrate the standing. The narrator allowed the silence to do it. She came down the 2 steps from the well of the witness stand. She walked across the floor of the courtroom toward the rail of the gallery. She stopped 4 feet from the Admiral. The Admiral inclined his head. 1 degree. She inclined hers. 1 degree. In the gallery, Master Chief Petty Officer Garth Tucker took 1/2 step forward and rendered a salute. The salute was for her. The salute was the salute that 56-year-old Master Chief Petty Officers do not, ordinarily, render in federal courtrooms in front of 230 civilians. Tucker rendered it anyway. Across the gallery, every person in uniform, 3 Marines, 2 soldiers, 1 Coast Guard chief, 4 Navy reservists, 1 Air Force pilot in the back row, stood and rendered the salute. The protagonist returned them with a single nod. The metal at her throat had not moved a millimeter all morning. She walked, with the Admiral and the Secretary of the Navy and Senior Trial Counsel Sosa, up the center aisle. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened for her. The clock read 11:35. The cascade began at 12:47, 2 miles from the courthouse. 3 flag officers, names that the narrator delivered without characterization, because the audience did not need the personalities, the audience needed the count, were taken into federal custody at 3 separate residences in Northern Virginia, the District of Columbia, and a houseboat slip on the Severn River. 2 civilian Department of Defense officials were taken from their offices at the Pentagon and at the Mark Center in Alexandria. 21 mid-tier indictments were unsealed across 4 states. The Polaris Maritime Solutions Defense Charter was revoked by the Maritime Administration at 1400 Eastern. A sealed transmittal, 3 thumb drives and a 46-page paper appendix reached the senior counsel of the Senate Armed Services Committee at 1640 Eastern. A closed session was called for the following Tuesday morning. The witness list named, on its first page, a single name: Blackwood, E. The witness list noted, in a parenthetical that would not survive the closed session, that the witness was unavailable for further public appearance until further notice from the Department of Defense. Holloway's 7 figures of indirect compensation traced, by the end of the next day, through 3 shell entities, a yacht slip in Annapolis, and a real estate trust held in the name of his second wife's first husband. The trust traced, by the morning after that, through a holding company in the Principality of Liechtenstein, and back to a board seat on the Polaris Maritime Solutions Defense Charter that the Maritime Administration had revoked 20 hours earlier. The narrator did not editorialize. The narrator named the chain. The narrator allowed the chain to speak. Holloway, in the holding cell at the Norfolk federal lockup, did not speak to counsel. He sat. He looked at the wall. He had, by the narrator's accounting, 23 years between this moment and the median age of expected death for a federal judge in his demographic. He would spend most of them in a different building from the one he had imagined. Cyrus Ridgemore, the brother, the network's actual operational head, slipped his mooring at the Annapolis Yacht Yard at 01:19 Eastern, 19 minutes before the warrant team arrived. The boat was a 68-foot motor yacht. The slip was D-14. The registry was pending. The narrator named these. The narrator did not name him as gone. Gone was not the right word. Repositioned was the right word. Officer Henry Castellan called the United States Attorney's Office at 1:33 on Saturday afternoon, 26 hours after the courtroom had been cleared. He provided 3 names that the IG investigation did not yet have. He resigned his post at the federal courthouse the following Monday at 8 a.m. The narrator did not redeem him cheaply. The narrator wrote, "Castellan made one call. It did not buy back what he had walked toward in that courtroom. It did the next best thing. It made what came after a little less long. He sat in the kitchen of his small house in Norfolk that Saturday afternoon, with a tumbler of water in front of him on the table, and read the receipt of his call to the U.S. Attorney's office twice. He did not call his wife. He did not call his daughter, who served. He sat in the kitchen until the light changed. Tucker drove the protagonist from Norfolk to Arlington in the back of the Cadillac, the color of a calm sea. The drive was 3 hours and 7 minutes. He did not speak. She did not speak. The metal stayed at her throat. They reached Arlington National Cemetery at 2:14 Eastern. The protagonist walked Section 60 alone. She did not speak to the Admiral, who had ridden in a separate vehicle and waited at the visitor center. She did not speak to Tucker, who waited beside the car at the edge of the section. She knelt at 3 headstones, side by side. Owens, Marcus J., L.T., USN. Reyes, Daniel T., SCPO, USN. Park, Kestrel H., CWO, USN. She did not speak. She placed 1 challenge coin at each marker. The coins were the size of silver dollars. The face of each coin showed a star above a wave. The reverse of each coin was blank. The wind moved through Section 60. The grass was shorter than the grass on the deck of the Calder. The grass did not know the difference. If this story stayed with you, if you have ever held the line in a room that wanted you to step out of it, subscribe to Honor Tales. There are more stories like this one coming, and the next one starts where you least expect. She rose from the 3rd headstone. Her phone, in the side pocket of her slacks, vibrated once. She read the message standing. The message was 3 lines. Starfall is still standing. Cyrus made Valletta. Image attached. She thumbed the image. The image was a photograph taken from the wall of the Grand Harbor Marina, Valletta, Malta, a slip in the southwest quadrant, a motor yacht, 68 feet, registry pending, a man at the rail of the boat. The man had his back to the camera. The narrator named the harbor. The narrator named the boat length. The narrator named the rail. The narrator did not name the man. The narrator did not need to. The audience knew. The protagonist looked at the photograph for 4 seconds. She did not enlarge the image. She did not save it. She did not reply to the message. She slid the phone back into the side pocket of her slacks. She turned, once, to look at the 3 headstones. She did not speak. She walked, with her hands flat at her sides and her breath even, away from Section 60 toward the Cadillac at the edge of the section. The metal at her throat had not moved a millimeter all day. The wind through Arlington moved through her hair, through the riband, through the open collar of her blue blouse. She kept walking. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.